Hello and welcome to April 8th wasmCloud community call. We today are going to do our Q2 roadmap planning session. If you haven't seen it, we have a discussion item out here that really prompts folks to first think about, what's one thing that we should prioritize basically this quarter, aka by the time we get to July, where do we think we should be? Or feasibly could be by July. What's a rough edge that you've been hitting repeatedly and we should fix and pave away? And what would make you want to deploy this in production? Um, Post your comments here. Totally fine throughout this week. We will, maintainers, work on converting these to tractable issues, although also feel free to file your own issues. But we're going to collect all of this feedback and create some actionable plans around it. But first, let's sort of let's suss out and collaboratively fill out what kind of high level themes and things that we want to take on for this quarter. It's 3 months, so we can definitely get in new features. We can definitely improve a number of parts of the ecosystem. Uh, During this quarter, there's going to be some big rocks that change things, like WASI P3 shipping will happen this quarter, and I think that's going to be a pretty major thing that we should prepare ourselves for. So I'll go ahead and add that one here as a big one that we can talk around because there's definitely pieces and parts of it that we'll have to plan for. We do already have a tracking ticket for it, and we do already have some experimental support behind a flag. So some of these things are already in flight. And I'll call those out as we go through. If they're not already in flight and we don't already have an issue for it, those are definitely the best ones to highlight right now. Um, who all is on the call? I'd love for you to and welcome you to join the Excalidraw here. Dropped a link in the Zoom chat. Uh, and I could put it in other places, but I'm a little bit more nervous. At least in the Zoom, I can do a little bit more moderation. YouTube's a little is a little too far for me. I think there's too many bots there. So I'm not going to do that to us. Um, I think just to get started, I'm going to highlight a couple of the high-level themes, or like at least how I'm thinking about it. And then I'd like to be quiet for a few minutes and let folks kind of drop in their own feedback items in here. But first, I'll say we've got basically here's a couple of themes that I propose. I think there's a lot to do in the realm of the component ecosystem. Like make X, Y, and Z, compile to a component and provide that as an example for people and give them a way to have a really nice ergonomic development experience with WebAssembly and WebAssembly components. I think that there's a plethora that's happening in the world today with LLM fuzzing and all kinds of new techniques that are cropping up to secure both open source software, ways to do it for WebAssembly, ways to do it specifically for wasmCloud. So I want to leave a bucket open for that. There are other things that we want to add to our operator and platform experience. I'm just gonna clean this up. I'll just delete that. For our operator and platform experience, there's work that Jeremy's doing right now that's in flight that I'll call out in a bit. And so anything that you can think of in terms of like observability, runtime, operator, Helm charts, customize, integration with, something in the cloud native ecosystem, that's a good place to call that out. And then separate from that side of the world, integrations with other ecosystems in terms of, building out support for MCP servers. I've done some experiments with that, but I want to leave it open to ideas of what people think wasmCloud itself as a project should be doing to better support all of these new types of workflows that are ending up in the world. So in this section here is where I've kind of like dropped out a couple of themes. I'm gonna add a couple more that I have in my head that I haven't already added on the board. But while I'm doing that, I'd love it if the people on the call right now would also add their ideas, please. And we'll go through them together. So you have about, I'm going to give you 5 minutes and I'm going to be quiet and we're all, but if anybody else wants to talk, they can talk, but I won't be.
Did I just come in at a really quiet part of the meeting?
No, we've all been waiting here for you. I'm
Not yet.
joking. I'm
Okay.
joking.
Hi, Liam. So I promised everybody I would be quiet, and I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to add to our whiteboard here. And then we're going to talk through the things that have been added. And if you want to add things, you can too. I posted them in the Zoom chat.
I think I see mine on the board already. Thank you.
How are folks feeling? Are they need more time? You want to go ahead and move into discussion? We can keep adding things, of course.
I say let's discuss. Seems like quite a
Yeah.
bit here.
Okay, yeah, and DP, if you want to keep helping me with the creating the DIY dot voting, I would appreciate it. I want to cover basically everybody on the call, and really just get kind of a voting on the people's priorities on different things. So I'm gonna start in the top left here. In the co component ecosystem world, there's this big milestone that we're about to reach, and it folds into a lot of different things that we need to kind of break down because there's, we're going to have to do work for every language, right? Here, in terms of what we need to provide in our examples and our integration. Um, there's additional work in terms of just what new things can we do. And I'll bring that up as we go through a couple of others, because I put in an issue that I want to propose that we take advantage of. That's something that is more reasonable to be on the table now than later. Um, there's a couple other things, so let's just keep running through. I think as a project, it would be great if we work together on componentizing the world and that if we know that there's a type of example that we want to build that would be, universally helpful for people, then let's track it in wasmCloud and say we're going to build this example and link to what we had to do in the upstream to make that real. And for example, I could link to some of my PRs that I've been doing for launch badges, SQLite create inside Rust. So this is one that I threw in there, but I feel that there's a lot of these, and what I really like about them is that they're good first issues. They're good issues that anybody can pick up because they're going to be small, concrete, kind of something that will generally also benefit everyone. Now, this one I tossed out because I wonder if it's helpful, or if this should be something that's kind of external to us. I'm actually on the fence on whether or not we should even go this route, but I wanted to put it out there because I'm curious what other people think. We could, and we have thought about adding sort of a wash compose command, which would take your wash config and help you compose components together. We've been toying around with a YAML style syntax because that's what we have in our config. But I don't want to prescribe that. I think what I want to know right now is should wasmCloud as a project be interested in trying to provide composition tooling, or is that something that's better served in external projects? And is that something that the WASI CLI should provide? Another one I threw out here was, are we fast yet? I really want to have a web page for our wasmCloud runtime that anybody can go to and see where it's at and what we're operating on and what metrics we're aiming for next. Another big thing that I've heard reports from lots of people, including messages that we had recently over the past week in wasmCloud Slack, is there's a major desire and need for a single host to serve multiple different backends for a given API. Now, I have ideas for how this could work, but I think understanding at least what the problem is going to be really important to people. And so I want to know, the prioritization we should put there. Jeremy, you want to speak to this one that I think you added?
Yeah, actually, this is just more, I mean, wasn't Cloud V2, extremely Kubernetes focused. I just think we just need to get vulnerability scans just enabled, but Trivi, whatever, inside the repo, just so we can show that what we're building, especially since we switched over to doing Ubi minimum. Wait, I think we did for V2.
We'll see.
Can't remember, right? That we can at least attest and say yes, we do have a clear bone free type of image.
Right. And I think you've added some of these too. So do you wanna talk to this section?
Yeah. And once again, this is like from EU KubeCon, and then talking with some other companies that are using wasmCloud, but just coming up with some additional integration examples, but really like more for getting started. Coming with like basic local stack configs that are kind clusters, but here's a kind cluster with Envoy configured as the ingress, and then it uses V2 and how it will use the services and endpoint slices for doing the resolving and routing. Same thing with traefik, same thing with Istio. And these are just like minor tweaks that are going to drive, I think, some Helm updates. But of course, the primary goal is to have it so wasmCloud is a quick, easy, get started and go. But we also want to have it so we have some easy getting started examples out there for companies to be able to say, oh, okay, this one's close to my type of setup right now, and I can now use wasmCloud to extend our Kubernetes cluster. And then exact same thing with resolving and routing with OTel examples also. That's the next one down there.
Yeah.
So would that include Envoy Gateway or?
Yes, yeah, and Frank, thank you so much. There's actually a PR that's out there that I should have ready for code review again today, but the example in there, it does have Kubernetes API Gateway as the basically the manifest for you to integrate with the resolving and routing that is now going to be exposed through service endpoints that are headless, no cluster IP required.
So to answer your question there, Frank, yes, and because it's using the Gateway API, you can fulfill it with whatever your gateway
No,
controller
absolutely.
is.
Yes.
Cool. Let's see.
Actually, from the image scans and so forth, what about image signature or some level of protection for images?
Yeah, there's some stuff here already. Are you thinking on the runtime operator, the container artifacts that we push, or are you thinking about WebAssembly components?
For anything that you're going to be running, that they should be signed so you know where did they come from.
Yeah, let me show you one thing and see if this is separate from that. If you build with our actions toolkit, I think if I have a fairly recent run here, I can show this off, not lint, but yeah, CI. Every time if you build with our setup wash action and build with it, and then you use this action to publish, it does come with a couple of things that are just built straight into GitHub, where you can get signed attestations and provenance for your build and your component artifact, and that's signed based on the OCI artifact itself. And then you could propagate this if your enterprise has like an internal SIG store, you could propagate that there as well. But essentially, this is totally built into GitHub now. But at the end of the day, all it is the built-in SIG store signing and cosign underneath.
Okay, no, that I think this should probably be more publicized.
Happy to help. Also looking for help for that. We have it in our docs. We have a blog post. It's hard to get people super excited about things when they just work TM and they just work the way everything else just works. Yeah, I didn't get a ton of traction on the blog post I wrote about providing this, but yeah, I love that it just works. The other thing I'm going to highlight is that I've just been sprinkling this everywhere I go, by the way. So if you are even just doing WIT only interfaces themselves, and so yesterday I published the latest version of WASI. And part of that publishing this artifact as well is also signed and attested. Let's see, what's the easiest way to get to this? Probably this one. So you can see attestations for each one of these. Let's look at WASI random. This also exists for those artifacts. And so when you use GHzero to pull from this, you can also do sign and attestation at that point when you're actually cloning it down. And so this trick here is something that you can do for your own projects as well. And all of this is actually together in a reusable GitHub workflow. So basically, it's really, I feel kind of lame at how simple and easy it is to make it just work. It's just the set of YAML right here at the end.
Okay.
That is
Good.
it.
I mean, there's a lot of boxes to go through, but I think this is great.
Yeah. Okay. But I think probably let's if we don't already have this, and I will verify, we should make sure we have this for like our runtime operator and other images. I know I'm doing it for the WASI CLI because I actually use that to validate on the install. If and so instead of having to come up with my own, like, make sure you have the right public key and download from that, I actually use GitHub to do the validation and install. So if you look at the install script for WASI, you can see that in there. All right. Do you have other suggestions? That was great.
I added two boxes there.
Ooh.
One is the multi-cluster support.
Yeah, let's talk to it. Tell me about it.
I just think it would be wonderful if we could have the operator running in multiple clusters and somehow they coordinate things. I don't know yet how and how effective this will be, but I think this is for resiliency and for performance. I think this would be.
Is
Yeah,
it? Oh, go ahead, Jeremy.
well, I was just wondering, Frank. So, kind of thinking, with Argo CD, when you have multi-clusters with Argo CD running, the runtime operator could be per cluster, but maybe we do provide at least like the Argo CD type pattern of, here's the destination cluster, and then the runtime operator doesn't really know that there's other ones out there, but maybe it's
Well,
it
the
can,
trick is not really how to deploy in multiple, but it's actually how to make them integrate and knowing of each other.
right. Okay. Hmm.
Anyway,
All right.
that's probably a tough one. The other one is simpler, is the box below that one, is the performance metrics and results. It'd be nice to have something that we always checking where we are from a performance point of view.
Yeah, I would love this with K6 personally. And also something that we're just continuously running. I want to look at that before I cut a release, and I want the historical data even from this. Yeah, so I want the historical context. I could be lame and commit it to JSON to the repo, but maybe we'll use something else. I don't want to be overly prescriptive here about the solution. And Matt, I know that you probably added these two. One thing I want to highlight real quick is that we do have two commands that are standalone non-K8s hosts. The first one sets up a development server. So basically a host that's preloaded with dev plugins that are really handy to work locally. So, if you're using Blob Store, we'll give you a file system, that type of thing. The other one is actually wash host, which is literally just a host that's like configure it and you can point whatever scheduler you want at it. Now, whatever scheduler you want, that's probably the part where you're most interested in exploring. But wash host is sort of the equivalent to V1 wash up. I don't know if you can have audio or anything right now. But if you want to talk more, happy to hear it. Okay. But I've definitely heard other people ask about non-K8s scheduler support. Right now we show folks, hey, you can just drop the Kube API server and point our scheduler, aka the controller, straight at it. And our controller doesn't need actually, a Kubernetes stack to run. So we do provide folks with a Docker Compose example today. What I think other things that are kind of in this domain that I think are interesting that I'll just toss out because I'm curious if folks want it. I don't have a use case for it right now for myself, so I'm not right now building this, but microcontroller and tiny device support because we could make we can now make a compilation that's tiny because WASM time can go tiny now, and that's a big deal. That's a big change from even a year ago. So that's something else I'll throw out there that's also of interest. That's pretty cool. So moving on to integrations and ecosystem. I talked a little bit about this one already, but this one actually came from our wasmCloud Slack when we were asking for feedback for our roadmap session. Essentially, folks would love to see SQLite. They gave a shout to Lightstream if possible, and PGLite, StuLap. I'm sure there's like so many more that we could include here. It would be nice to kind of like enumerate those so that we can create, sort of our high value target list. But those are some that we've already been given feedback on. There's been a ton of work in the upstream recently on making big Go work, not tiny Go, and also having a ergonomic supplied by the Bytecode Alliance, essentially SDK and CLI experience, just like we have with Componentize Go, Componentize.net, Componentize Pi, all of those. It would be great if we revved ourselves with our Go repo to basically be modernized in that view. That'll give us a lot of things that should just start working versus what we were previously dealing with, problems with the Reflect library not being fully ported over for TinyGo. And so like weird stuff would just kind of fail at runtime, which was not amazing, but that'll be resolved from migration to Big Go. I threw this one in because I see this get asked a lot. Folks are really confused on when they should use a service versus when they should use a host plugin. And so I think building out some examples to show the art of possible with services is part of this. And another part, it would probably be just like literally having that in our FAQ. So I'm actually going to drop that. Oh, geez. I'm sorry. I didn't even see this. Who was this? Help me. Was this you, Aditya? Do you want to talk about it or any more that I might not have added?
I don't have anything to add, but yeah, just it should be covered in the docs, not even the FAQs, because it's a huge part, and there's a lot of confusion in when to use a service capability and a host plugin. So yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of the confusion also stems from not seeing any examples and numbers behind it. Like, what's the scale look like between these two? Like, why would I do one or the other? What's the performance difference? All of that. I think a lot of these issues here are tied together. But
Yeah,
good call. Thank
the
you.
performance trade-off between keeping a TCP stream and I think recently someone mentioned it in the chat as well.
Yep. Okay. Moving on to this section, sort of suggestions, miscellaneous, somewhat in the same vein. Our templates having code in them is maybe sending some people when they're getting started. Maybe we have too much in our template themselves, and we should trim that down to be more of a scaffold. And this one also came from somebody posting in our Slack. They suggested that we consider moving things like our template service TCP into examples and really fully completing that solution end to end. Perhaps maybe that template as standalone is just not very useful for folks to get started with. I would say like maybe we should do a CP, maybe get a template that's useful for people and get an example that's really powerful that explains it all. And in that way, that's why I think these two are very related. I threw in our obligatory. Oh yeah, hey Yortis. Has anyone done a sandboxing on top of wasmCloud? And also Yortis, if you've got Mike, you're also welcome to jump in here. You've been working with Trogan AI. Yeah. Hi Yortis.
Hello. All right, I joined late. My bad. I'm saying it's like if somebody have done any like AI sandboxing stuff that are popping up everywhere now on top of wherever WASM Cloud.
Hell yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Obligatory. Look up Sandboxing MCP. Just Google
Okay.
that.
No, Bailey, just pull it up real fast.
Yeah.
SandboxMCP.ai. I'm actually working on like our phase 2 of that right now. That's why I'm like heads down and muted. Yours, I don't know if you can see my screen or not. I
Yeah,
hope
yeah.
you can because I'm not sharing it.
Yeah, so the reason I'm asking is because like if you Google no, don't Google it, but in the trucking AI stuff that I'm doing is just everything on top of NAT, so full distributed mode all over the place. Everything is stateful on top of Jetstream. So now I need something that is capable to, spawn these sandboxes with all the capabilities into it.
Love it.
Ideally, I get to manage, which I'm trying to do it with WASI. I'm trying to figure out if I can make the CLIs, cloud code, all the stuff to work, and hijack somehow the runtime to be WebAssembly behind, so I can inject my network policies and all the stuff at that layer.
I'll tell you what, there's no better sandbox than WebAssembly if you can get it to compile to it.
Yeah.
That's the big asterisk there. I think.
So in terms of MCP, I mean, there's a big push now, either MCP or APIs.
Mhm.
And so CLI probably it will be as powerful as MCPs, and less things to maintain.
Yeah, so WASI CLI, it runs straight on wasmCloud. I think we could probably let me add a section for that. We could show some WASI CLI as tools that are being used in the agentic space. I think WASI-HTTP MCP in a workload
Yep.
is a no-brainer. We already have that. We just yeah.
Ideally, if you can showcase, like, for example, the networking policies that people are doing, the filtering. For example, I have one that I don't know how to do it, but a proxy that takes the HTTP one and applies a filter that tokenizes the credentials, right? So I don't know if you use like better VGS, something like VGS, where like it's just a filter, takes the HTTP. You have some sort of like code that runs that takes the tokens and then replace it with the actual secret you want out and in.
So
Yeah.
there's a couple layers there, right? The way that Claude Code works, for example, is that it does process level sandboxing, in that it's doing namespacing for your file system. It's using, like, if you're on Linux, it's using this thing called bubble wrap, which is your process level sandboxing. And then they actually have their own layer there for essentially BPF, where they're saying, you can't create a socket. So they're able to block syscalls at that level. But then they've been playing this whack-a-mole game of like, well, you can't have your Git credentials. I obviously know that those are a secret, and so they add a proxy just for that, but they don't have a proxy for your AWS S3 API key. And so that whack-a-mole's just kind of been continuing. Now, there are things that people already have in place that are existing controls that they've already heavily invested in, at least from an enterprise perspective, and especially when they're interested in running any of this stuff at scale. And that's just network policies inside K8s, which would be awesome to provide people. I think they should totally look at that.
Where will you do it?
Basically,
Assuming
the
that everything
CNI
is
layer.
100% WebAssembly. Okay, like assume that.
That's a big magic wand, Yordis.
I mean,
I've been waving that wand as hard as I can for a couple years, and it hasn't hit yet.
I'm personally, I'm gonna make it work that way, even if I bleed out and I have to create an struct type next time, West
Okay.
time. I don't like. I'm going for that route. I'm
Yeah.
ignoring Linux and everything is like WebAssembly 100%.
Well, I think that WASI-HTTP is actually, while I think just being able to compile the CLIs is cool, what's powerful about WASI-HTTP in regards to being different from other approaches to this problem is that we can actually do service chaining where it never actually drops out to the network. So like all the downsides for why people hate MCP We just don't have it in WebAssembly. Okay, I don't know why that's being weird. I'm just going to delete it. But essentially, if let's say you've got an agent that you load in your workload deployment and it has tools that it needs, you put that in your workload deployment, and then you would talk to those tools over WASI-HTTP, but those are all going to can be composed together in that same workload. Then you're not dropping out on the network stack. And we do all of this via streams in WASI HTTP. Everything is built on the Stream API, so it's like extremely efficient. And now you have a structured way of communicating with any kind of tool.
Okay, here's another one for you, Bailey. I'm trying to make everything on top of WebAssembly so that the agent get to code for itself.
Of course.
So all I get to do is the control plane of like, yeah, sure, I'm gonna give you like networking or like system, file system, whatever that means, access. But they just ping me to, yeah, let me do this, but they get to code their own like stuff and compile, bundle, all the stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of the policy layer there for like how we expose things to their interfaces, a lot of that sandboxing in the wasmCloud ecosystem is with the workload deployment spec. So you can look in there and see how we give you the file system. And it very much depends on the infrastructure that you're trying to run this on. If you have Kubernetes, you have some pretty big advantages to being able to offload to things like blob storage for that layer.
wasmCloud.
Or Jetstream blob store. But it's very much the case that, you could go full, like, if you have all the RAM in the world, you could virtualize all of those things with WebAssembly, which is a kind of another like pure WebAssembly approach, which would be a virtual file system for a lot of this stuff. And then you're sandboxed.
Yeah, I'm trying to go with local LLM. So what I'm trying to do is to create entire gigantic mesh of NATs of superclusters, and everybody can just join into it and do some workload. I'm betting on Apple figure out hardware encryption and other stuff for these things, and hopefully if they do that, by the time I make it work, the security aspect is sorted out.
We'll see. I mean, that's just basically a classic grid computing problem. So whatever you use for your grid infrastructure is the challenge there. But okay, for this one, I think this was you, Aditya. Do you want to talk to that one?
Yeah. Currently, our host HTTP handler is a bit tightly coupled to WASMtime's default send request for handling the outgoing requests. So the initial suggestion was to add a outgoing request trait and just implement your own outgoing handler function. But that was basically done for, let's say, if someone wants to add their own custom TLS certification business logic. I think it was Pavel or iPhone. But with the addition of P3, we don't know how that's going to look, because I haven't taken a look at the P3 merged code yet. My bad. I'll do that. But yeah, I just wanted to bring this more into the circle.
Cool. Yeah, I think we need this one. I think you've run into it. iPhone ran into it. I imagine more people will as well. I think we have an issue or two filed and maybe one or two PRs. If you don't mind, like, linking those all up just to make sure we're not forgetting anything, because it seems like we tactically got the gRPC problem done, but left a couple other things that were valuable on the table on that one. I want to make sure we do it this time for real, and we don't have to do it again.
Yeah.
Did anybody add anything else that I'm missing? It doesn't look like it. So everybody gets 4 dots. These are your dots. So what I'm gonna do is take a dot and I'm gonna put it on my favorite thing. Who would have guessed that I would pick that thing? Yeah, go ahead, Aditya.
I actually added 3 more
tell me where.
items. Yeah, it's just these 3.
Okay, talk to him.
So the entire workload multipath routing for allowing more than one component to export the incoming handler. So basically, hear me out. I worked on a POC where we basically had more than two components in a single workload exporting the WASI incoming HTTP handler. And we gave them basically their own host interfaces and segregated them based on a path. So I know this can be done easily if there's the what do you call that?
Path-based routing?
Yeah, the path-based routing at the runtime gateway, which I forgot about. So is there any trade-off between doing that at a high level versus doing it here? Because if we give components the ability to have their own host interfaces, it could allow them to export the same interface, but do something else, for instance.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about this.
Doesn't this fall into thank you. It is components. All right, I was about
let's do it. I keep dancing around it because there are more design issues that I need to work through. But let's talk at kind of a basic level. I think this is where we've always wanted to be as a project. From the very beginning, we've always been like, we're going to solve this with WebAssembly components. The question was when, not if. And why do we have native plugins? Well, there's always going to ultimately be something that has to be done outside of the sandbox, right? For whatever reason. It might not necessarily be because it has to it can't compile to WebAssembly. But for many cases, it's more that, well, this isn't a sandbox thing. It has direct access to the hardware. Therefore, it must be a host plugin. There are always going to be cases for that, so we're always going to have these host native plugins. But there are just as many other cases that, especially with WASI P3 and cooperative threads, the world is wide open now on what can actually compile to WebAssembly and what should be executed within a sandbox. And, from my book, if it's a client and that's all it's doing, that should be a WebAssembly component, full stop. And now, if it's a client and it's providing basically what you expect the host to provide, and you want to ship that down into the platform, today you have an option. You can just go ahead and compose that in to your workload. So like for the problem that you were talking about, Aditya, today you have a workaround. You could do WebAssembly composition, but you have to do that ahead of time, before it's landed on the host. And we do still want to require essentially, we want to preserve the declarative principle that we have for all of our deployments. So that's still an aspect here because there are different ways that you can link. If it's not immediately resolvable with our basic resolution that we do today, then that's going to break outside that declarative principle. So you need a whack script or something like it to say, okay, this is how it would line up. This is how we would do which instance goes where, and then it works. Now, there are also cases though where I just want every component, every workload to have this. I want everybody to be able to talk to Nats, and I want everybody to also be able to talk to Redis at the same time for the same key value store. So I want to use this to solve a couple of the problems that we've highlighted. We've talked about being able to have workloads just call host interfaces that are actually components. We've talked about wanting to have multiple backend instances for a given host interface. And there's just no better solution than WebAssembly component instances for being able to still preserve our multi-tenancy requirement and be able to create different instances for different backends, right? WebAssembly components are just perfect for that. Now, there's challenges, and that's why I was saying, there's more to talk to. I think from a design perspective, what you have to consider now is that if this is something that's supplied by the host, and I still want to preserve that declarative requirement, this needs to be part of the host instantiation process. When the host comes up, it needs to be able to say, I provide these interfaces, and if it doesn't work, it needs to fail, because we can't schedule any work out there. So that's part of what this part is related to. But there's also other challenges in regards to reentrancy, which isn't completely solved in P3, even though I really, really wanted it to be. Now, I've tried a couple. I've made a couple different versions of this, and I've played around with it. I think there's more work to do here to get it completed, at least a complete technical design plan. Um, so I DTO, you call out the sandwich problem, and I'm like, guess what? I'm only going to do this in P3 because I love myself. And so I am not going to deal with the sandwich problem that exists in WASI P2 with pullables, which for folks listening, if you don't know what that is, essentially, if you have a callback table, you need one callback table to know who all to call back to. And the sandwich problem in P2 is that maybe multiple people have a callback table. And if you're in the middle and you're the sandwich that has, the meat of the sandwich, and you have your own callback table, the host isn't going to know to call you to call your callback. In P3, the concept of who calls who, like in an asynchronous fashion, is pushed down into the runtime. And so that resolves that problem. So that problem goes away. The reentrancy problem is different in that when I invoke a component and I'm invoking it from different components and they're all invoking the same API, I also need to have the right call when I'm coming back out when each of those have resolved asynchronously. And so the way that it should work is that I should be able to be spawning a subtask for each invocation. But I will talk more about that in the issue. There's some complexity with what we have today with WASI P3, where I think it could be in maybe a 03.2 or something, an 03.x. And when we slot that in is of interest to me. One more I want to throw in here is also named interfaces. And I don't know if you've seen some of the work that I've dropped on that, but just to call that out here. And I want this all the way as part of the ABI. Oh well, this is basically the same thing but different from what I was trying to play around with. Maybe this is literally the same thing. Yeah, it's literally the same thing. Okay, so I played around with it here, but essentially this is how I would propose that we differentiate between I want to use the Nats backend or I want to use the Redis backend or etc. So this, coupled with a host component, would give me a really nice way to have extensibility of my runtime without having to create my own wasmCloud host. Okay, sorry, that was a big tangent. Are there others that you added? I think you have a couple more. Will you talk to them, Aditya?
No, I think that was it. There's one about the CronJob provider, the service being more complex. I think Victor referenced it in a GitHub comment. So right now it's a bit basic. It's just sleep, wake up, and fire. But we need something a bit more tangible for people looking to build a bit more production ready instead of having to implement their own every single time. So I think the overall community would benefit quite a bit if we did this.
That's a great call out.
Are you thinking on more like aligning to like this the typical Kubernetes cron job?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. All right. Well, we only have 5 minutes left, which means we have 5 minutes to put your votes in. And I will capture this, and then I will work with the other wasmCloud maintainers, and we'll work on putting together the full project roadmap. I started on it here, just so you know that it exists, but we haven't really brought over things yet. I want this to inform that. So please grab your little dot and vote on your thing. Don't vote multiple times. I know you can. This is the honor system. And also, if you realize there's like nuance lost when you're playing around with trying to figure out which one to vote for, which I kind of got frozen where I wanted yes as the answer. You know, that's also really helpful information if you want to drop comments in our discussion or directly on the roadmap here. I would really appreciate the feedback. Did everybody get a chance to vote? I'm going to take a screenshot of this and drop it in the wasmCloud Slack, so folks can see, and hopefully maybe we'll get a little bit more also feedback throughout the week. But my aim is by the end of the week we've got most of this roadmap here filled out. This one filled out, capturing kind of what we think we need to get done this quarter. So thanks everybody for coming in and participating and also contributing, right? Because we're gonna need you to get all of this done. So we're at the top of the hour, so thank you, and we'll talk more.
See y'all.